Thank you all for joining us today. Again, I'm Josh Starr. I'm the CEO of Phi Delta Kappa, and Educators Rising is one of our signature programs. We are delighted today to talk about what's going on in Louisiana, as we have been working with folks throughout that state to design or to help implement, I should say, a grow your own program. The title of this one is called No Money, No Problem, because we're going to hear the story of how leaders in Louisiana have really just sort of embraced the work and gotten things moving in some powerful ways without necessarily having all the funding in the world. And we know, although there's tons of stimulus money right now, that we know school budgets are always a challenge. So we want to be able to tell that story today. It is part of a series that we've been doing. This is the fourth in a series that we've been doing about our Educators Rising program. If you missed the first three, we had Connecticut, Arkansas, and Illinois. You can see those at our website. If you just type in the website and then go to Grow Your Own, and maybe Albert can put it in the chat. We have a Q&A feature on this, so if you put a question into the Q&A, we will get to it. You can put it in for a particular panelist or just in general. Also, if you put it in the chat, Albert will be Albert, our COO, will be responding to it in real time. We also collect all of those and we'll get back to you on some things. We always post Q&As afterwards. So if you go to educatorsrising.org, grow your own, you'll be able to find all of that, but please put stuff in the chat or in the questions, and then at the end we'll get to some of the questions in the Q&A. I also have some pre-submitted questions that we're going to be getting to today. We also want to offer an opportunity to implement our program at a discount. If you've attended this webinar, you can get a discount off of our curriculum right through the end of the next school year. So contact Reggie. You see his email down there. Again, maybe we can put that in the chat, Albert, to reserve a spot, because we want to make sure that folks have an opportunity to play around with the curriculum and access it as you think about starting your own, grow your own program. So I'm just going to talk for a minute or two about the problem we're trying to solve, right? When we think about grow your own strategies. So we know that even before the current situation we're in now, that there is a teacher shortage, and baby boomers are retiring. We know there's attrition. There's particularly a higher attrition rate with teachers of color, but we know that we need to hire teachers nationally. And you got to have a comprehensive long-term strategy to do that. We also know that it costs money to replace a teacher in rural suburban areas, and it costs a little more to replace teachers in an urban area. When I was superintendent of schools in Montgomery County, we calculated that it cost us about $39,000. We invested about $39,000, I should say, in the first 5 years of a teacher's career with us. That's real money, right? And it's important. We should be investing in our teachers. We should be making sure that they have everything they need so that they're supported. But when there's turnover, then it just presents a challenge. So we want to make sure that we have, again, a comprehensive strategy for getting folks in the community to teach in the community and stay in our schools. That's what we're all about at Educators Rising. We know nationally that there's been a 35% drop in teacher prep program enrollments. We're seeing that all over the place. I know schools of ed are hurting, and so that's a challenge as well. And so we know what the problem is, right? We know we have an issue with not only the shortage, but we also know we have an issue with retention, and then we have an issue with the fact that not enough people who look like our kids choose to go into teaching. And more research has come out over the last couple of years that really shows that kids of color benefit from having teachers of color. Now, we should always note, of course, kids of color also benefit from great teachers of any background, right? Any demographic area, demographic category, so to speak, or any demographic. But we know that there's a distinct benefit of having someone who looks like our kids teach our kids. This is just some research from Dan Goldhaber. We did a webinar with him and Travis Bristol a little while back. We're actually doing a special issue of Kappa Magazine with Travis coming up soon. But there's some real research that shows having teachers of color matters, right? It absolutely matters, and it's something that we have to be committed to doing within our institutions, right? It's just incredibly important. The research backs it up, and we know the situation, right? Most of our teachers are white women, and most of our kids in schools now. And there was actually an Ed Week piece just today about the rapidly changing demographics in suburban areas, and districts are struggling with this. We know that the face of our kids are changing, and we want to make sure that the face of our next generation of teachers are changing. We're quite proud of the work we're doing at Ed Rising to make that happen. We also know that about 60% of teachers teach within 20 miles from where they attend high school. So education is a local workforce development challenge and question, right? How do you get folks from within your community to stay and want to teach within the community? That's the challenge and the problem we're trying to solve at Educators Rising. And one place that has been doing it so well, of course, is Louisiana. So that's what we're going to jump into. You have met me. This is our panelists. I think everybody introduced themselves while I was rebooting, so I won't go through that, but you can see who we have today. And so what I want to do is start with the panel and just talk about how, and maybe Kim, you can start with this, right? You guys started with a pilot, right? This wasn't like a full blown out comprehensive strategy. Thought, let's just kind of start this from the grassroots. So talk a little bit, Kim, if you can, about how you got started and what the vision was, and how you just started making the road by walking.
Okay. So yes, despite this amazing journey over the past few years, we're actually super proud that whenever we had everything out in front of us, we pretty intentionally chose to use a really teacher-driven, like place-based driven, student-driven model that we were quite content to kind of create as we went along. So yes, our program started as just one pilot. And I think we're in a space where every single person on our panel today, but also just our teams across the state and different schools realize the need, right? And we also realized that we didn't have 5 years to start. Like if this program's successful, it could take us 4 to 5 years to get one return on it whenever a student comes back to us. So the biggest thing that we had in mind is really like start exactly where we are. We can't keep laying groundwork. We can't plan to start in 4 years because that would be 8 years, and we need amazing teachers now. So from this one particular place, it was really important, like looking around our state and our landscape, knowing teachers do a whole lot with few resources every single day. And so that wasn't anything daunting or new. So instead of us having a system that was going to be sort of the top down, we looked at everything that we had in our space. We know we have students, we know we have partnerships with teacher prep, we know we've got amazing teachers, we know we've got a lot of social capital through the state and a lot of ways that we could leverage everything that's in front of us. So from this particular space, we started this one class. Mr. Watts, like I said, he's my boss. And I was prepared to go in there and like offer to teach summer school for free to pay for this curriculum. But he's like, no, I think we can find another way. So after this initial class was started, we really all started to work together to really move this around the state and then really empower communities to continue to build along with us. So there wasn't one central place pushing things down. It was more about what can we do within each space to build what they've got, include their own community, their own chamber of commerce, their own people, so that we could actually be more secure that this was a sustainable program and not just a moment when what we really need is a movement.
So let me so I'm always fascinated by how a teacher is able to convince a superintendent. So I'm a former superintendent, and teachers would come to me all the time with, got this great idea, I've got this great plan. So Mr. Watts, can you just try to jump in here? I mean, what was it that said to you, yeah, this is something that I'm gonna try to find some support for, and this is a good idea. Talk a little bit about how why you decided to support Kim in this idea that she had to get Educators Rising started.
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Josh. Great question. First and foremost, the person, Kimberly Eckert, her energy, her desire just for wanting to help kids and wanting to find ways to help kids. And so when she comes to you, there's some credibility with it. As you know, Doc, that different teachers come. Unfortunately, some of them don't have any credibility, but she had a lot of it. We saw the impact that she was making at her school. She took an instructional leadership position, said, I want to go back and teach kids. When she went back and taught kids, this came about. She became the teacher of the year in our state. And she said, this is something that I'm passionate about. And I will just tell you, for me, my core philosophy about teaching is the number one way we make education better is to put better teachers in front of our students. Mm-hmm. And this was a way to do that. So it just fit right in what I personally believed. But most importantly, I would say it was because I knew I had the right person in Kim leading the way. And I just said, you just tell me what you want, you tell me what you need, and I trust you, and let's go at it. When you put that trust and you empower somebody, so especially with somebody with her skill set and her just passion for this profession, then things just work out. And that's exactly what happened, and just couldn't be prouder of where we're headed, and this much needed in our state. And for somebody that takes pride in what we provide for students educationally for Louisiana, it ought to always be spoken of in the bottom tier of it. Things like this are going to make it better.
That's right. That's right. Well, I appreciate that. One of the things I always tell folks in different states is that, you just got to start. And whether you're at the university, whether you're at the State Department, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a principal, what we've been finding throughout the country is that it just takes one person with vision, gumption, just says, I want to start moving on this, and then other people start following along. So I think that's part of the Louisiana story that's powerful, that we hope others take from the rest of the state. So talk a little bit, maybe Kim, and this also might be something for Amy as well. Like, who else has been involved as you've been moving with the state affiliation, right? Who else, Kim and Amy, have been involved in helping to get Educators Rising moving throughout the state?
I'm definitely going to hand it off to Dr. Weems in just a second. But really, in the early planning, we knew that sort of all the plates needed to spin together, because we were going to have a much stronger program if each player was playing the same game at the same time. So that was really critical for us. And so we had a lot of work reaching out with stakeholders that already support teachers. We really did a good job of pulling those in. Obviously, our teacher prep programs in higher ed and making those relationships. A statewide organization we have called Dream Teachers, our chapter of LaStoy, which is Louisiana State Teachers of the Year. And from there, I'm gonna hand it over to Dr. Weems, because there's a whole other exciting world of partnerships, and she was really key in finding those too.
So as Kimberly said, there was a lot of discussion initially about making sure that whoever held the state affiliate would help us cast the widest net for how to get the most people, the most districts and universities and everybody involved. So again, it was so important. The State Department of Education, it was kind of the first thought, but there was a lot of interesting things happening in our State Department of Education at the time. And so, we became problem solvers, and we partnered with the Louisiana State Teacher of the Year Network. Kimberly and I both work closely with that group. And so we've been very pleased. And then through the past year and a half, the Louisiana Department of Education has really been able to step up and become kind of the helper on the back end to really work with us on scaling up and not making it a top-down policy. So we were so pleased with that. We also got involved with the Louisiana Workforce Investment Council to get our pre-educator pathway that is built on the Educators Rising framework, recognized as a state focus item for industry-based credentials, because they see the significant need that we have in Louisiana to fill these positions and to really strengthen our pipeline and to diversify our pipeline. Mm-hmm. We are now working with the Louisiana Board of Regents and the Louisiana Association of Colleges and Teacher Ed Programs to get articulation so that students have even more leverage to move from the high school realm of Educators Rising into teacher prep programs. So again, we've had so many groups involved, and we've learned so many lessons about working together and working in policy space, but we're just very pleased that it did start as grassroots, and those grassroots are now starting to all weave together as we grow.
So you know what I love about that, Amy, because we heard this in some of our other conversations too with Connecticut and Arkansas and Illinois. I think we're going to rename these webinars How to Connect the Dots. And like finding people who can just figure out, wait a second, this is a workforce development issue. Maybe there's some title money involved. You know, there's all these different folks that and frankly, finding the right people who can connect the dots is critical. But of course, without students, there would be no dots to connect. So Braxton, like you were part of the first class, right, to get involved in Educators Rising. Tell us a little bit about your story, your journey. Like, why did you get involved? What inspired you to do it? And now that, you know, I know you played a bunch of different roles in Ed Rising, and now you're enrolled in an educator prep program. So like, tell us a little bit about it. What inspired you to get involved in kind of roles you've played in Educators Rising in Louisiana?
So I believe my junior year in high school, we had a career day at high school, and our school divided us into what careers we would like based on a survey we took earlier that year. And actually, I was put in one of the secondary education seminars, and actually Mr. Watts was in there. And he was talking about all the, you know, why it's beneficial to be a teacher and why we need teachers. And later that year, Miss Ecker came up to me and said, hey, we're going to do this Educators Rising thing. Do you want to be a part of it? And I was like, I'll do it. And I had no idea that this was that little conversation right there was going to bring me here. And I'm forever grateful for it. I played many leadership roles in that class. Ms. Ecker gave me plenty of opportunities to speak at beta conferences and to speak on all types of panels just like this one. And she enabled me to do this at Southeastern. So that's my story with it.
So had you thought about being a teacher before, or was it kind of maybe something on your radar, but it was really seeing, you know, get a little more exposure? Like, tell us a little bit.
It was on the radar. It was there. I was going more of like the medical field route, the orthodontist, dentist route, because that's where the money was. But then I realized that money wasn't going to be the fulfiller in my life. I wanted to help people and teach students. That was going to make me feel fulfilled. So that's why I chose.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think there's, you know, some of the things we try to do, we know a lot of folks do a great job of, a lot of our teacher leaders do a great job of, is helping young people understand that you actually can be financially stable as a teacher. A lot of people pick up extra jobs, but they do more things. But, you know, a lot of folks figure out a way to make it work for them and their families. And the best advice my parents ever gave me was, do something you love doing, and the money will come. As long as you can support yourself, you're all right. But do something you love doing. Don't ever go into a profession that you don't like. So talking about money, folks, let us turn. One question I have, and I think this is kind of an open question. It might be for Kim or anybody else. Like, what about some of the barriers and the challenges in expanding Ed Rising in Louisiana? What have you experienced? And I'd also be curious, Mr. Watts, like, have you seen any barriers within the district? And then I'm thinking more broadly, Kim, within the state, what have you been seeing in terms of challenges?
I'll let you start, Kim.
I'm a good inclusion teacher, so I was like reading the room, and you unmiked.
I knew you saw that.
All right. The good news is, whenever we speak of barriers, I've really got a great mentor in Mr. Watts. So he really helped me put a lot of pieces out. And really, in a systematic way, there's going to be barriers to everything. But like, which lever do we need to pull to move the barrier out of the way? And so it kind of goes back to that idea. We knew that a lot of pieces could start together. This isn't a linear process, like with step one, and then you need step two. Like, all the steps can start together. So almost immediately when it came to expansion, there were issues in terms of like school performance score points. Like, what would incentivize a school to have this class? Because unfortunately, having teachers is not necessarily the biggest motivator whenever it comes to accountability in our state. And we realized that. Another substantial issue is that if we're also looking to diversify the pipeline, we knew that this type of coursework, it couldn't be held only for students who were granted access to dual enrollment or like a typical sort of AP student, because in many spaces, and certainly Louisiana, there aren't as many students of color in that field. And we know that there are some programs that had failed in the past in that aim. for diversity because those classes were they rested in advanced coursework. So, and then thinking, how can we do this? How can we get course codes? How can we message this? How can we reverse like decades of thinking that a teacher looks a very specific way and has to have a very specific 4.0 in physics? And how do we switch it to where we really focus on a 4.0 in humanity, 4.0 in human beings? And so that was a really interesting thing. And so I'm gonna hit it over to Mr. Watts to talk a little bit more about all the brilliant things he'll say.
So barriers, just some of your typical teacher barriers, Dr. Starr. Just we've done this before. This is just another one of those teacher prep programs, and this is not what that is. And so that was some of the kickback we had maybe with our schools within our district. Is we've had these before and they weren't successful, and the messaging Kim talked about, it messaging that this is different, and the difference is this is based on human beings. We are growing human beings, and we're growing people to go impact other human beings. And you took some of the content piece out of it, and content, we're not saying diminishing the value of content, but the focus of this was on people and drawing people in that could influence young people down the road, people like Braxton. And so that was some of the barriers. For us, maybe some other districts, the school accountability piece might have been a bigger barrier, but for me, this is about kids. I'm confident in what we're doing, and we weren't chasing accountability school performance scores. And so this was just something that was really important to me in terms of the need of having great people in front of our kids. And so, but I would just say that biggest challenge was, man, we've done these things, but we've had these teacher programs before. What's different about this one? And I think that you said it earlier, Dr. Starr, we just had to start. And I just told Kim, let's get going and we'll figure things out as we go. You know, it's not gonna be perfect. And I think she's done an amazing job of that. We've had to bob and weave sometimes to redirect where we were originally thought we were headed. And but that's just, I think anything that you're going to do that's worth doing, you're going to have some of those things. So that were the two biggest barriers. We've done this before, and what's this supposed to look like in terms of school performance scores?
Yeah, so I always, every school, every district always has their weebies, right? We've been here before you were here. We'll be here long after you were there, and we're just gonna not pay attention. That's always an issue. Yeah, I appreciate that. Kim, it looked like you were trying to get in, then I want to go to Amy. But
yeah, this is one I just thought about, and it really speaks to the presence of Braxton, right? And using your student capital. A big problem, and Dr. Weems will be able to speak to this. It's like, okay, if we're going to do all this, like, where's the research? How does this thing work? And we know that in this manifestation that some of this work is new. We know from research some things that haven't worked. We know some elements of some things that have worked in some places, in some pockets. And that was interesting. And so Dr. Weems has been really incredible about building a research base. And then on my end, it was immediately like, we need some pudding so we can have proof in it. So it's like, let's get these kids in front of people. Like, I coach teachers, right? So taking students and putting them in conferences and just mixing them in teacher conferences, and you can't tell who's a high school student and who's, you know, a 10-year teacher. So that was kind of the space, like more anecdotal and more like qualitative. And then I'll turn it back over to Dr. Weems to talk more about how we're still trying to build that research base. We have an answer to that.
Yeah. Great. Dr. Weems.
They said it so well, reframing the narratives about old models of teacher preparation. I actually was part of a previous attempt in Louisiana to do career pathways. And so I had learned so many lessons from that process 20 years ago that we were able to say, but we're learning these lessons and we're reframing the conversation to go in this direction. Also putting classroom culture and community ahead of just content. So I learned this from Kimberly, you know, we're looking for kids that want to make a difference in the lives of students, who want to use English as a way to do that, or who want to use art education as a way to do that, rather than, oh, you're good in English and, you know, we're going to find you some kids to teach. So just really reframing those narratives. And yes, working in the university space, you know, with K-12 people, it's all about points and money. Sometimes, you know, how many incentive points do we get? How much money can we have to do this? And in higher ed space, it's, is this publishable? Is there research existing? So again, you know, we just had to go out and take a leap of faith and find these districts that were willing to partner with us. And I have a great boss who was willing to let me go this direction and dedicate a lot of my professional work to this. And so now we're conducting a statewide qualitative study about the impact of educators rising on decisions to go into the field. And Braxton is my new favorite person because he has agreed to help us with some of that research. So again, just all the parts are moving at the same time, but we're just going to keep plugging away at it.
So that's fabulous. We're going to go to Braxton in a second. I want to mention a couple of things. One, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A, put them in the chat. I know I see some coming in. Wanted to mention a couple of things. One is, you know, the research, and I love particularly Mr. Watts, what you're saying about what you value as teachers, because it's so important to hear a superintendent talk about what we know matters. And the research is so clear that teaching is an emotional activity, that you need engagement and connection. It's not just about delivering content. And to hear a superintendent of schools say that, I so appreciate that, because it reflects what we know actually works to help kids achieve. We had an evaluation done a couple of years ago by some of our friends at George Washington University, and they found about half the kids who are in Educators Rising nationally just always wanted to be teachers for whatever reason, and about half the kids are more activists, right? They're community activists. They want to heal the world, very much the way I got into education. I wasn't planning on being a teacher, right? But I realized if I was going to heal the world and serve my community, then you do it in public education. And that really attracts a lot of kids. So I guess I want to hear, Braxton, from you a little bit. Were your parents totally supportive? What about your friends? I mean, again, not a lot of people are putting their hands up saying, I want to be teachers. Not a lot of young men, right, are putting their hand up saying, I want to be teachers. Did you face any pushback when you said, yeah, this is what I want to pursue?
So originally, whenever I told my parents that I wanted to be a teacher and that's what I was going to school for and I'm in Ed Rising for it, first thing they told me was that, oh, you're so smart. Why are you going to be a teacher? And I was like, wouldn't you want a very intelligent person to be teaching the next generation of people? So they got over that, and they do support me through and through now with being a teacher. My friends support me here. My entire friend group here at Southeastern runs it or helps me run Ed Rising. So I have a very good support system here. And then also I'm going to say with the research, backtrack a little bit to the research. I guess I'm living proof of that research, because in every education class I've had here, I've been miles farther in my pedagogy development, my theories about how to run a classroom and how to manage a classroom. So, and I had no idea that I'd be that far ahead in all of my classes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Miss Eckert, all that way.
That's fabulous. All right, so we did title this "No Money, No Problem," because there's a story here about, again, just getting started, right? And while certainly money does help, it also isn't a barrier. So can you talk a little bit, I guess, Mr. Watts, and maybe Kimberly as well, like how you started getting moving with very little funding?
Yeah, and I want to go back. Braxton is way ahead just because he knows what the word pedagogy means. As a college student, I didn't learn that till 10 years in the field. But anyway, the money issue is strictly like the key for us was getting the course approved in the state to say we could have it, and then it's just a matter of having a teacher for us. Let's start. I mean, you said it earlier. This is the third time I've said it, but you just had to start. And we said we wanted this class. We had the class approved. And that kind of leads to one of the other barriers I left out, is students in high school only have so many opportunities for classes to take on top of their required classes. So how do you encourage them to take something like this, versus an art or versus some other elective or whatever course they may be interested in? And that was the recruiting piece that Kim really drove. But the no money deals, we just decided we're going to hire a teacher position for this class. We were kind of in a tight spot budget-wise at the time, and said it's just so worth it. I'll cut something somewhere else. It was that important, and really all we needed was approval of the state for the course to be taught, and then we just hired a teacher, and we just went from there. The other school in our district, the other high school, maybe wasn't ready for the teacher. We didn't have the right teacher, so we didn't want to just start it with just anybody. So we started a club there, and the club didn't cost anything or very little. And so really, we just said it was worth it for us to have a teacher in this position for this class. And that's where we started, really with no money. I just taught my HR director into hiring another teacher.
Yep. And I cannot reinforce enough. Nationally, we hear this all the time. The key is finding the right teacher, finding the inspiring. It can't just be anybody. It has to be someone who is dedicated to this. So on that, Kim, you want to talk a little bit about the funding issues and how you've been dealing with that or lack thereof?
Yes. And I'm going to fast forward to the future, which I guess is the present right now. So things are looking up in Louisiana. And I like to continually juxtapose these two realities, because now, like after that first pilot year, the program in the form of classes and clubs, it spread to 14 districts, and we just added another 19, and we're a small state. And so now there's so much movement. Whenever we go back to this original space, a lot of what we did was understanding, like within our own community, where are the budget pieces? Like we got so smart on like pots, and realizing like what was costly and what wasn't. And so every time we start a new chapter, that's part of the training that goes into it, because we don't want places to feel like they have to have like this continual reliance, right? Like they need to be able to tap into their own community and those resources, and teaching them like how to get how to invite your community there and make sure that they're there to stay and make sure that they are part of this with you, because no one should have to do this alone. Public education is for everybody. I think we see that so clearly now. So that's a really critical piece. And then as we continue to network and partner, our list of what we know gets better and better. So whenever we hear about a district, well, we can't use that fund, but we've got this one. Then it's like, oh, this parish is using that one, connect. So that's another thing that's been really cool, is that there's no one person who's like wearing the crown here. And it's very much by design, because someone's the smartest at so many different pieces. And it spreads like wildfire whenever you just connect people to the right people. And there's just a kind of a funny anecdote. Whenever I talk about how we trained other areas to also rely on their community, we relied so much on our community that first year, our students went to state conference because our local sheriff's office let us use their bus. So it was free transportation. So yeah, it didn't have any markings of the prison on it. I will say that, but the kids got a kick out of that we got the prison bus donated. It was very comfy, very posh. So yes, like there's just, whenever you know what you're asking for and you train people to ask for it, you really find no shortage of people who want to help out.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we found where as state and regional coordinators, there's so much information sharing about raising money, and we're also finding there's some states like Massachusetts, for example, they're using workforce development dollars. Like people are just finding different ways. Title dollars can be a lot more flexible than some people may think they are. And you can, I actually, the work that Shawana Tucker did in Connecticut when she was in HR in New Britain, like she pieced together all these different kind of, a little bit here, a little bit there to find the money to get it moving. And then once it gets moving, it gets going. So, okay, I have, we're going to go to Q&A. We have a couple in the chat. There's one in particular I want to touch on. Then I'm going to ask everybody one last question, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about the program, and then we're going to end. So there's a question in the chat around recruiting for diversity, essentially. I'm boiling it down to that. And let's talk about that a little bit, right? One of the things we know is that, again, 77% of our teachers are white females, 82% of our teachers overall in the country are white. Demographics in the country have changed with our kids. We're very proud of the fact that 52% of our kids in Ed Rising are kids of color. But for others who are seeing this approach as a way to not only address the shortage, but to diversify the profession, what advice do you all have for that? Like what specifically should folks be doing in their local jurisdictions and districts and schools to recruit for diversity? Who wants to start?
I can. Okay, yeah, Dr.
All
Weems.
right, Kim, start.
Oh no, I saw Dr. Weems
okay.
unmuted. Yeah.
I just want to say, as a university and teacher prep program, we leveraged our MOUs with our partner districts where we do residency and block placements, and we intentionally partnered with highly diverse schools that were doing innovative and promising things. And that has been one of the most rewarding ways of making sure that the students in those programs really look like Grow Your Own, and they have just done amazing things. We've also worked to make sure that we're identifying teachers who are understanding of this mission to diversify the pipeline and are recruiting diverse students who may not necessarily just be like off the top of your head, you think, oh, they fit the model of teaching, which, if you look at what you've shown us in our demographics, we have to intentionally break outside of that model. So I would say those two things have been the best for us. And as far as like working around barriers over budget, we traded off budget expenses with our district. So they paid the stipend for the teacher to come to training, but we covered the training and the food for that day. And then we purchased the curriculum for our partners, but they dedicated the time for that teacher to teach it, which is it's a budget issue for principals. So just trading off and making sure we're making intentional choices to recruit for diversity, but also in diverse schools.
Right. I love how intentional that is, Amy, but also this idea that like, you got to find your people in the right places and then they'll help you. Braxton, you want to jump in on that? And then I'll go to Wes.
Yes. So one of our goals here at Southeastern is to literally just do tabling events at these diverse schools that you were talking about, Dr. Weems, because I'm a steal Miss Eckert's line is if the military can recruit during a tabling event at lunch, why can't us teachers do it?
Love it.
So that is our plan at Ed Rising. Whenever the pandemic has settled down and we're allowed to go back into the schools and do the tabling events, that is my number one priority as the leader of Ed Rising Collegiate here at Southeastern.
That's great. Just having a presence, getting out there. Yeah, Mr. Watts.
Yeah, I want to say two things. One, it's having the right person. Kim attracts kids because she loves them. And so that's a huge part of having that right person in place to start the class. And then secondly, it's just being intentional. And the idea that she didn't go out recruiting people to be teachers, actually. We actually recruited people to be leaders. And she recruited them and said, hey, do you want to grow as a leader? And and she knew that every kid that left that class wasn't necessarily going to be a teacher, but they were going to be better at whatever it is they chose to do. And they were going to impact other people because of this class and because of what was taught. And then they were going to be the biggest supporters of education because of what they went through this class. So the intentionality of that we didn't pigeonhole students into being teachers, although that's kind of the underlying goal, right, to get these great students. But it wasn't chasing 4.0 students. She chased and recruited students that impacted other students, and she chased their heart. And I think that was a critical.
I love that. And also, we call ourselves Educators Rising, not just teachers, right? Because teachers are the key, but we know that you can be an educator in a whole bunch of different ways. And just what you said there, Mr. Watts, I'm not going to repeat, but that's powerful. Kim, you want to weigh in on that real quick? And then I'm going to do a speed round with each of you on just like a couple words of advice for anybody who's going to try going. So Kim, talk a little about recruiting for diversity, then give your advice, and then we'll go around the horn on that.
Okay. All right. So to package up what Dr. Weems said, yes, you cannot recruit for diversity where there is no diversity. So step one, you have to find a school that actually has a diverse population to begin with. And that might seem so obvious, but it's not. It was like a light bulb went off like, hey, we should, if you want like more brown kids, you should find a school that has some. Number one. Number two, education is super important. So every time that we train, whether we're training students like Braxton or teachers that are going to take this incredible leadership opportunity, people need to understand why diversity matters. If not, we risk tokenizing an entire generation. And it's just irresponsible to not also talk about that. So whenever we do like train and we have these conversations from the students to the teachers to the leaders of these groups, it's really helping them understand why, like what are the benefits for all children? Why does every single child benefit whenever we've got a diverse and reflective teaching force? So that's the other piece that I was going to say to be able to answer that question. Intentionality, like do it all on purpose, because accidents will get us where we were, and lack of intentionality is going to perpetuate exactly where we are.
All right. So is that your advice also? Be intentional?
Yes.
Okay, good. Amy, I'll go Wes, and then I'll go Braxton on like one sentence of advice to people who want to get started. Amy.
this is a long game, not a short game. So, just know that you may hit a wall or hit a closed door. Just, look for the open window and how to partner up with people that can help you get around the barriers. Find the open-minded people that are problem solvers, and just be committed to the work. When you have a guidance counselor who says we can't fit it into the master schedule, work with them to figure out how to make it work. Those things are critical.
Long game, love that. With a lot of short-term wins too. Mr. Watts, a couple words.
The way to make education better in our country, in your state, where you are, is to hire and grow better teachers.
Right.
Period. Putting better people in front of our students will create better students, better people, and a better society.
Can't program your way out of stuff. Can't just buy a new curriculum, new technology. It's all about the people. That's right. Braxton, you get the last word on advice.
So my last word of advice for the teacher leaders that implement Educators Rising into their classroom: let the students see behind the curtain. Like take off your mask as a teacher and let them see the person that is teaching them. Because that's what drew me to Miss Eckert in the first place. She always told us, here's a look behind the curtain, and showed us everything that there was. And that drew me to the profession immediately.
I got to tell a quick story. My favorite teacher when I was superintendent in Stanford, who then became my professional development lead, she said that when she learned how to do that is when she became a great teacher. When she acknowledged with her students, wait a second, this didn't work, let's redo it. That's when she ended up becoming a great teacher. Mary Jo, she was awesome. Love that advice. Okay. Quick, down and dirty on what is Educators Rising. And you also see down there, you can email us, you can ping us, follow me on Twitter, and you can DM me if you want more information. We are a community-based initiative, right? With the idea that chapters at schools feed teacher prep programs at higher ed with support of district leadership, state departments of ed, and local philanthropy. We're starting to see more and more of that. And all of that comes together to help diversify and grow the profession. We have chapters, we have a fabulous curriculum, we have clinical experiences, right, where kids actually get in and they're working in classrooms in their communities. We have micro-credentials. Some universities are now offering credit for those micro-credentials, right? We have competitions. Come to our national conference in June. It is fabulous. Kim, when's the Louisiana one? That's coming up, right?
April 14th.
April 14th.
Yeah. Great opportunity to see it. And then there's national. Next year, of course, we'll be live, but like the conferences and the competitions are just fabulous. We have Reggie who's been on this, but you can see just some of the quotes from some of our folks who have been leading the work. And it's just inspirational to see why some folks want to be teachers. And then we also have our blueprints, right? If you just go on our website, we pulled together expert panel practitioners, as well as program experts and policy experts and academics to create what we hope is a very practical blueprint for establishing it, establishing programs. So please get on the website and check that out. So I want to thank Kimberly, I want to thank Braxton, I want to thank Amy, I want to thank Mr. Watts. I really appreciate what you all have been doing in Louisiana for our kids and for your state, but also for the country, frankly, because we know that by building these kinds of initiatives and improving our schools, we really do heal the world and we really do make the country a better place. Like it's that straightforward in my mind. And that's what we're trying to do with Educators Rising. You all, I think, have a fabulous story to tell, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. And this will live in perpetuity on the website and on YouTube so that other people can hear your story and they can make their own road by walking, right, and just get moving. So, and to everybody who participated, I apologize for the glitch in the beginning, but hopefully we recovered. Please let us know if you have further questions, reach out to us. Send us an email, DM us on social, whatever it may be, and we can help you get started on this work. And I appreciate all that you're doing in your schools and communities and places of higher ed, whatever it may be, state departments, to try to help grow the next generation of teachers. It is great work, and we really appreciate being able to walk alongside you as you're doing it. So at that, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Good luck in the conference. I know it's going to be awesome. And I just really appreciate you all being here with us today. All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.